Hey there, and welcome to Mad Mel's Mic. Thanks for joining me. My name is Melissa, and this is a podcast all about me, about my life, about life with PTSD, about my life with a husband and kids and friends and everything in between. Thanks for tuning in. So, welcome to episode 2, and thanks for coming back and having a listen. I just wanted to go through and give a bit of a detailed account of what happened in between my head breaking and now, and how we've gotten to where we are. So at the time I was working full time in the police. I was the age crime prevention officer, which works in a prevention role. So I would go to nursing homes and things like that and talk to them about crime prevention, particularly with scamming and things like that. So I really enjoyed that role. It was nice to deal with part of society who weren't constantly getting in trouble. So that was it was very rewarding, and I found just chatting to all the old ducks and stuff, that was really enjoyable. I really liked that. So I was rostered on to work an afternoon shift during the January school holidays. It was the 6th of January, and in 2021, and I was working afternoon shifts, and I think from memory I was assisting with licensing, so going in and to the pubs and things like that, and making sure that there was nobody particularly intoxicated and things like that. But there was a job on the radio just outside of Cowra where a colleague's daughter had just been killed in a car accident, and her twin sister, they were only 19 at the time, so quite young. Her and her mate were driving to the South Coast for holidays, and I had to go pick her up. And look, I didn't actually go to the car accident, and the only thing I can sort of explain is that I took my work hat off and put my mum hat on, and gave her everything that she needed, and gave her the love and hugs and things like that. And I think just the whole anticipation of having to get her back safely to Orange. I was in the car with her and her mate for about 2 hours, and they were asking me things about the car accident, and I actually didn't know anything about the car accident which her sister was killed in. So I think that was probably helpful at the time, that I wasn't able to answer her questions, and we were just able to get back into town very safely. So that's sort of in a nutshell the job that broke me. And then that night I started having nightmares from car accidents that I had been to 18 years before and things like that. So I knew that I was starting to spiral. And at that time of year, we always head down the South Coast for a family holiday. So I ended up, I think I had 3 days left of work before I started leave. And my husband spoke to the boss at work and said I wasn't coping very well, and that I was going to start leave early. So he tried to get me out of the house a little bit, and I was just crying that whole weekend. And I remember my little fella asking me what he had done and why I was so upset, and it was sort of heartbreaking to think that he was the reason that I was so upset. But I just kept telling him that it wasn't him, and it was work that had gotten to me. So we went down the coast and had a good time, but it was still in the back of my mind, and I was still torn about it. But I sort of soldiered on and just kept going. And then I went back to work, and ironically I completed the peer support officer's course. So I became a peer support officer, which I'm not sure that fits into the definition of ironic. What is even ironic? Is it just Alanis Morissette's song? Oh, who knows? Who knows what it is? But it sort of got me back into the workplace. And then the week after, at the time I was full-time. I was working 4 10-hour shifts a week. So I went back the week after and completed another full week of work, which wasn't too bad. But then on the 15th of February 2021, I was rostered to work an afternoon shift, and I when the accident had happened with my colleague's daughter, I was also working an afternoon shift, and I just think that comparison, knowing that I had to go to work on an afternoon shift, sort of subconsciously brought everything back out. And that's when I dropped both the girls off at school, and I think I touched on this last week as well, but I dropped both the girls off at school. They were in high school at the time, and then I dropped my young fella off at primary school, and I was just crippled and I couldn't move. I was just emotionally drained, and I was paralyzed by, I don't even know what I was paralyzed with, whether it was fear or, yeah, I'm not actually even sure, but I couldn't move. And so then I called my husband, and he spoke to the lady who worked with the EAP, and I ended up getting in to a counsellor that afternoon, and it was just on phone because I think February 2021 we were coming into COVID, and my memory isn't all the best with that, but I remember a lot of the appointments and things like that when I first went off all had to be done via telehealth. So they were either just literally a telephone call, not even like a Zoom face-to-face meeting or anything like that. So I remember just crying and crying. This poor counsellor, I don't think I was actually able to speak a lot, but we got through it, and she helped, and I think it was just a good sort of stepping stone for me to get me into the mental health. So after I spoke to the counsellor, I made an appointment to see my GP, and just because I had no idea what was going on, and this was sort of outside the realm of what we knew what to do in terms of my husband and things like that, but I knew that I needed help. So I went and saw my GP the next day, and we completed a work cover certificate, and then that's sort of when the ball started rolling in terms of work cover and things like that. Oh my gosh, the dog's barking. Here I am trying to have a D&M with my audience, and then okay, so it looks like the dog's been sorted. It was just the eldest moving. Who knows what she was going on about. Anyway, so once I got my work cover certificate, I then had to, nothing is done particularly easy. So I then had to make a HOD claim, which was a hurt on duty claim through the police. So then I had to make multiple phone calls to, I can't even remember what section it was in the police, but I had to complete my HOD paperwork through the police, so it was all documented correctly. And I found that very, very challenging, having to recount everything over and over again. And because I wasn't physically in the station, it was all done by phone, and having these conversations with people I'd never met before. And there's no sort of personalized meeting or anything like that. It was just very sterile and literally just bouncing the ball through all the questions and things like that. So that was quite tough. And then I had to speak to like my supervisor and explain everything again. And it was just one thing after another. When you're trying to deal with emotions and things like that, it was very difficult to be able to figure out what was going on and things like that. So, and as I mentioned before, we were through the peak of COVID, so nobody wanted to meet anybody face to face. So everything was done via phone calls. So I had an appointment with the psychiatrist, and he diagnosed me with PTSD. And then it just went from there. When I first went off, I was having massive issues with sleep, and to be perfectly honest, I still am now, but it sort of has evolved since then. But I was getting very, very little sleep, and what sleep I was getting was disturbed by nightmares and things like that. So the GP started me on some melatonin to see if that would help, and that didn't help at all. So then I went on to some harder sleep medication, but like even when I was on that, the stronger sleeping medications, I still wasn't sleeping well. Like I'd maybe get a couple hours sleep, and I literally felt like a walking zombie. And I remember walking into the GP's office one day and she said, we need to start you on something because you need to get more sleep. So I ended up starting on a low dose of antidepressants, and I felt like that helped marginally. But at the time, I was very, very involved in physical activity, and I know physical activity is very good for your mental health. So a few years prior to my head breaking, I had made a decision to exercise every day for that particular, and I can't remember when it was 2018 or 2019, I really can't remember. But I hadn't missed a day of exercise for probably close to 3 years. So I was running ultra marathons, I was playing netball, I was playing basketball, I was swimming, I was riding, and I was literally just running away from everything. So I have officially been diagnosed with complex PTSD, major depression, and severe anxiety. And my anxiety sits in my chest, so it often feels like I have an elephant sitting on my chest and just that pressure. And I know when I'm having a bad day because I will wake up with that pressure on my chest. And I think the reason that I got so heavily into running, which I already was prior to the injury, but it just exacerbated it more because when I was running, the pressure on my chest wasn't there, and there was pain everywhere else, but I was controlling that. So it just became my only coping strategy. And then I just continued to run and run. I would think at the peak of it, I was probably running 50, 60 Ks a week, easy, plus everything else. And like I was playing Div 1 netball, and that meant training. And then I was also playing midweek netball, and I was playing Div 1 basketball, and just everything I did, like there was nothing in between. And I think that's a personality trait. Like I was sort of like the all or nothing kind of person, that if I do something, I give everything 110%, and I am very competitive. So I think that sort of helped as a distraction to sort of just put a Band-Aid over my problems, and I literally just kept running and exercising just to solve all my problems. So on the 9th of December 2021, I was officially discharged from the police. I was medically retired with a mental health injury. So that, as much as I knew that I never wanted to return to the police, it was very hard to still grasp because I was at the academy at 18, and being a police officer was my identity. And yes, I have other forms of identity, but I'd been in such a strong position in the community as well. It's very difficult not to have that identity consumed in you, and you learn very, very quickly that the policing world is very insular. Everything sort of is entwined with the police. And when we moved to our town that we're currently living in now, I started a running group, and that was a great way to meet women who weren't in the police. So I was able to broaden my circle of who my friends were, and at that stage I had quite a good community of people around me who were able to help me. But when my head broke, because everything was so difficult, that circle got even smaller, and I sort of made myself a recluse. And I think that's what PTSD does to us. Everything becomes so difficult, and we're so heightened all the time that it's easier just to stay inside the house, so we don't have to worry about what other people may or may not do. And that made it very, very difficult. And I think I was very disheartened at the time when I left the police that people who I thought were my mates, and don't get me wrong, there have been some who have been amazing and have stayed in contact with me and things like that, but it almost felt like I became a leper, that people didn't want to talk to me or things like that because they might catch it. And I know that sounds completely irrational, but at the time, that was when my irrational head was screaming at me, and rationally I knew that that didn't make any sense at all. But it's just that part of my life where nothing rational was getting through, and I was living on irrational thoughts and feelings and things like that. So that made life very, very busy. And in that process, I was still exercising and running and things like that. So when I discharged from the police, I ended up starting a business, which was a property management and maintenance company. And that was another thing to distract me. And I just kept keeping myself busy enough so I was able to get enough sleep at night because I had exercised so much, but busy enough that I didn't actually have to deal with what was going on in my head, that I had literally pushed it down so far that to myself and to everybody else, I was completely fine. Like, I had no idea that I hadn't addressed anything. And it was a subconscious thing that I just thought I'll just keep busy and then I don't have to deal with anything. But hindsight's a wonderful thing, and I think you learn a lot from hindsight. But you live in. So once I started the business, I relied more and more on my husband to help me. I never wanted to have the conversations with my staff of hiring and firing, so he did a lot of that. And at the time, I thought I was running the business very, very well, and I was doing everything myself. Retrospectively, he did a lot for me, and we ended up getting advice from our family accountant, and he told us that this business is literally just not profitable and things like that. And at the same time, I'm not sure if you remember, there was that ambush with the Queensland Police where they were looking for a missing person, and the neighbour got shot and 2 police officers got shot. So that, I saw that on the news, and then from there, my nightmares changed. My nightmares changed into me attending the siege situation and then me becoming the hostage in that situation and things like that. So I sort of knew at that point that what I was doing for my mental health wasn't enough. So I ended up closing down the business, and then because of the character that I am, I decided that I would train for an Ironman. It makes no sense. I don't know why I would put myself into that position, but it got to the point where I still needed to keep my mind busy and active so I didn't have to deal with what was actually going on in my head. And I say that now knowing what I know now, but at the time I didn't realize that at all. I didn't realize that that's what I was doing. I was running from my problems and things like that. So yeah, so I ran the business for 2022. The siege happened in 2022, towards the end of the year. Closed the business up by December 2022, and that's when I was training for my Ironman, and I was training a lot. And then come February 2023, that's where everything sort of changed. It's where I needed to be able to help myself. So in February 2022, I was at the PCYC, and we had just completed Div 1 and Div 2 netball tryouts, and I was playing there with my daughter, and it was on a Wednesday night, and Wednesday nights we always play midweek netball. So we did the tryout, and then I think because normally back then I was playing 2 games of midweek, but the tryouts made me miss one of the games, so ended up playing the second game. And in the second half, I knew I was tired. I knew that I was exhausted, and I said to the other lady I was defending with, I said, I'm not jumping for any ball. It's midweek. It's not particularly worth it, and I'm just tired. I'm really, really tired. So competitive Melissa comes out and sees an opportunity for a potential intercept, and I go up for an intercept at the time, coming down on my left ankle, and I've come down on it so hard that I sort of concertinaed all the way to the ground. And as I've grabbed my ankle, something didn't feel right, and I've pushed it back. So I had actually dislocated my ankle and pushed it back in, and in the process of it, I ruptured a ligament, partially tore a tendon band at the back of my ankle, and because I pushed it back in, I have done capsule damage. So that resulted in me being in a moon boot for 9 weeks, and 6 weeks of that I wasn't able to weight bear. And I learnt very, very quickly that my only coping strategy for my mental health was exercise. And I didn't have exercise I could do anymore. So I literally fell into a spiral. I just went deeper and deeper into a spiral where I wasn't able to mask the full severity of my mental health because, I wasn't able to mask it through all my exercise. So one of my mates in town had been to an outpatient course to a psychiatric hospital in North Richmond called St. John of God. And I thought, she came back and she said how amazing it was and things like that. I thought, maybe I could be able to get on this course. So I went and saw my GP, and I got her to put together a referral for this outpatient program. And I called the hospital, and then they asked me who my psychiatrist was, and I said, look, I don't actually have a psychiatrist. And they told me that unless I had a treating psychiatrist, I wasn't able to get on the outpatient program. And just through me coincidence, really, I just said to her, I said, well, what if I came in as an inpatient? Would I need a psychiatrist then? And she told me that I would be allocated a psychiatrist from the hospital as an inpatient. So I had to go back to my GP and get another referral for the inpatient program, and which I did. And I ended up going down to St. John of God in June 2003. Now, just quickly as well, I just wanted to backtrack a touch. When I was laying on the netball court in agony, all I wanted was the green whistle. That's all I wanted was the green whistle from the AMBO. And I got my daughter to call my husband and say, look, do we have ambulance cover? Because I didn't want to actually get a bill later on. So he ended up coming down and picking me up and saying, nah, she'll be all right. It's not an issue at all. Anyway, lo and behold, it was an issue. But I remember laying on the court trying not to spew and what felt like me holding my ankle together. And one of the girls I was on the team playing with said to me, I know it doesn't seem like it now, but there is a reason why this has happened. And all I just wanted to go and say to her was, fuck off. I'm in agony. I'm sitting here, literally what I feel like is holding my ankle together, and here you are being all profound and saying that there would be a reason for that. Well, in hindsight, there was a reason. It happened because I needed to deal with what was going on in my head. And if I continued to go on with my exercise, that would be something that I would never have been able to deal with. So I go down and to St. John of God, and I'm an inpatient, and I've never been to a psychiatric hospital before other than in a work capacity. So it was very, very foreign being the patient. And I was scared. I was so scared. I was, first of all, scared that I wasn't crazy enough to be going to an inpatient program. And I was scared of what other people would think of me and this and that. And what I learnt very, very quickly was that what was going on in my head was validated. So the hospital has a specific occupational PTSD ward, so it's a lot of veterans, a lot of police, ambos, fireys, and things like that. And it was so validating to be there because everybody got it. Everybody who was there has PTSD. So it was like, oh, actually, what's going on in my head, that's not uncommon. So that was very, very enlightening. It's an actual PTSD focused course. So it's a 3-week program where it's run by psychologists, and each day you go to group sessions. There's no talk of trauma or anything like that. And we would discuss things like anger, and then in the afternoon would be anger management or relationships and things like that. And it's all specifically aimed and tailored for occupational PTSD and how it affects us all and things like that. At the time I went in there, I was only on one form of antidepressants. Clearly it wasn't working, so the psychiatrist that I started seeing did a whole heap of med changes. We found out very quickly that I'm very sensitive to anxiety meds, and it would just not knock me out, but I just was so lethargic, and I couldn't function in hospital, let alone being able to function at home at the same time. And we played around with my antidepressants, so I ended up starting a new one, and I just wasn't getting any better. Not that I was after a quick fix, mind you, that would be lovely, but we couldn't really see any changes with all the medications. There was a slight change in my depression, but certainly not with my anxiety. So the psychiatrist spoke to me about doing ECT, which is I can't actually think of what the acronym stands for, but it's where you put in under a general anaesthetic and they invoke a seizure to try and stimulate the neural pathways. So he mentioned ECT and another thing called TMS. And I had never heard of TMS before, but I had said to him at the time, I said, look, I've been here nearly 8 weeks. I said, I just want to get home. I just want to see how I can track it home for a little bit and go from there. So I ended up discharging and then coming home, and then the family saw how bad I was, because whilst I was in hospital, I learnt that it was okay to be vulnerable. It was okay to feel that the way that I was feeling, and that I was validated in feeling these things, and that it wasn't just me. So the family went, oh, okay, she's taken all her masks off and she's not particularly well. So I returned home for 4 weeks and I did a heap of research on TMS, which is transcranial magnetic stimulation. It's not invasive. You're awake for the whole procedure. There are no long-term side effects. And I thought, I need to try something. If I go back down for another inpatient stay and have TMS and it doesn't work, all I've lost is 4 weeks. But potentially it could work. It could help my depression. So what I will do is, I've got quite a good little video that I've found on YouTube. I'll pop that in the link as well. I'm not really sure how to do it, but I'll figure it out. So you can watch just a little 5-minute video about what TMS is. So when I speak about it, you will have a bit of an understanding as to how it works and things like that. So for TMS, they're 19-minute sessions. You're awake, you watch TV and things like that. It's just a little thing that sits on top of your head and just sends magnets to to stimulate the neuron pathways as well. So it's almost like muscle memory. So it's creating that muscle memory in such a quick time and over again that it opens up those pathways so you can start to feel that depression fog lift. So over the 3 weeks, I had 30 sessions twice a day, Monday to Friday. And I think after the first 8 to 10 sessions, I could actually start to feel that depression fog lifting. And I remember the last week I was there, I messaged my husband saying, I feel happy. Like I hadn't felt that emotion in such a long time. And it was so rare to feel that. It's like, wow, this TMS has actually helped. And I knew from then that this is what it is. Yes, my PTSD is going to be with me forever, and it's hard work, but the alternative is far, far worse. So I knew at that point that I needed to fight for this, and I needed to fight for myself. So I got back home from spending another 4 weeks in hospital. So over the course of 2023, I spent close to 3 months as an inpatient in the psych hospital. And I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about the injury and what I need to do to be able to see marginal improvements throughout it all. Once I got home, I got back into my sport and exercise and things like that, but I made a conscious decision to not have to exercise every day because it didn't matter if I didn't, and to make sure that I was doing things mindfully and I wasn't exercising for the sake of exercising, and I wasn't exercising for the sake of being able to control my pain, and I wasn't punishing myself for not swimming far enough or walking fast enough or running fast enough or far enough. Because if I didn't reach those milestones that I had subconsciously set in my head, all the negative self-talk would creep in, and it became the exercise that I was doing pointless. So that was quite a learning curve that I discovered whilst I was in hospital. So when I got home, I ended up getting a little mini Labradoodle. Her name is Betty. She is black. She is not named after the song Black Betty, despite what many, many people think. She's actually named after my best friend's song called Betty. And I would encourage you to listen to Taylor's Betty because it's a cute little song about teenagers, and I loved it. That was my favourite song at the time. So I named my little service girl Betty. And it wasn't because of the Black Betty song, it was because of Taylor, my bestie. Anyway, so after I got Betty, it's amazing what a broken head will get you. I'm just going to throw that out there now. So my mum and my dad and my sister were all going to New Zealand, and they said, well, you had better come with us. So I spent 2 weeks over there with my mum and dad and a week over there with my sister. Had a great time. Was doing pretty well. What I thought was pretty well, trudging along. I was seeing the psychiatrist. I was seeing my psychologist. Whilst I was in hospital as an inpatient, I ended up changing psychologists. I thought that the one that I had been seeing at that time, we'd sort of run our course, which is fine. And I think things like psychologists and psychiatrists, you need to be able to have that rapport and feel comfortable so you can open up and be vulnerable. So had a great time in New Zealand. That was in November 2023. Got back Christmas, down the coast again, and then in April, things started. So in April, shit hit the fan again. In the process of when I had been off work, I had become quite good friends with a lady who I knew from the police, but didn't actually work together. Anyway, once I went off, I sort of had secluded myself and isolated myself a fair bit. I didn't realise, but she had gone off probably about 12 months after me, And we just sort of formed a connection because we both understood what it was like. And if at the last minute we said, you know what, I can't be bothered going, they wouldn't be, like, she wouldn't be upset because we both understood. Anyway, so I was getting back into my exercise and trying to form a healthy relationship with the exercise. And I had Beck come over and we were doing just workouts at home. And because I was trying to rehab my ankle, another mate had put together, who's an exercise physiologist, she had put together a program. So here I was, didn't have an ankle guard on because I was just doing a little bit of light weights at home. And we were doing step ups. And I remember Beck saying to me, because we were doing the step ups on a bench press. And looking hindsight, it probably wasn't the best thing to do, but we did it anyway. And the way I had this bench press set up, we were doing it at opposite ends of one another. So it was lengthways. And Beck had said to me, oh, I don't want to go near the window because I'll fall through. And I've gone, hey, no worries, I'll go sit. I'll do step ups there. Anyway, we had done one set and I'm going, fuck this. I do not want to do any more exercises. And we've just gone, nah, let's finish it. We've only got 2 more sets to go. Let's get it done. And step ups were the first one. So I've literally stepped up on my right foot and stepped down on my left, went ass over tit and did my ankle again. So I'm sitting there in agony. At the same time I went down, I nearly went through the window. I had bruises on both the outside of my arms and on my elbows from where I've nearly fallen through this window and have tried to catch myself on the window frame. And I've gone down and grabbed my ankle. And I'm a swearer. And I was swearing like a truck driver, like nothing else. So here I am laying there going, shoot, fuck. I fucked my ankle again. Beck, bless her, I love her, started to panic. So bear in mind, both of our heads are broken. We together, our brains probably don't even form half a functioning person. So we weren't doing very, very well. And she goes, what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? I'm going, I don't know what to do. And I'm trying not to cry. What do I do? She goes, I'll go get ice. I went, okay. So she goes into the kitchen and comes back out with some ice. And then she goes, what do I do? What do I do? And I'm going, I don't know what to do. She goes, I'll go get more ice. So she comes back with more ice. Like, I don't know why I needed more ice, but I got more ice. Anyway, so I said, just call my husband. And I had done another ligament. Yes, I don't do things by halves. And that resulted in me being in a moon boot for another 6 weeks. Luckily, I was able to weight bear, so that sort of helped a little bit. And that actually, I think, was the day after there was that police shooting in at Sydney, and the female inspector shot that fella who was going around stabbing people in the shopping centre. And I had called my psychologist and asked for an emergency appointment, and she thought it was about that. But then when I rocked up with a moon boot, she was able to go, oh, hang on a second. And she was really, really helpful. She was able to discuss how things are different this time from how they were the year before and things like that. So she was very, very helpful. So I just kept doing what I was doing, spent 8 weeks in a moon boot, seeing a physio every week. And I'm very fortunate because my physio is actually a mate, and she knows that she's not just treating my ankle, that she's actually helping my head as well. So I'm really, really blessed to have such good treating parties around me, whether that be for my head or my ankle, because this ankle seems to be a saga that never ends. So I made the emergency appointment with the psychologist, and I was able to pick myself out of the funk. And then I was able to squirm my way into a holiday with my mum and dad and my mum's brother and his wife. And so we ended up spending a month between Canada and the States, and that was amazing. I think it was really, really nice to be able to have that one-on-one time with mum and dad and just build on those connections and things like that again. So I had a great time over there. Get back 2 weeks later. So just to give you a bit of a timeline as well, I had been out of my moon boot probably 2 weeks before I went to the States. Spent 4 weeks in the States, came back for 2 weeks, had been given the all clear to get back to netball and basketball and all my sports and things like that, as long as I had this specific ankle guard on. And I'm going, yep, brilliant, more than happy to wear an ankle guard. Anyway, I started playing midweek netball again. I had missed Saturday comp. Once I got back from the States, we were halfway through the season. I tried really, really hard to get on a team, but everybody was full. And I think in hindsight, it was probably a good thing, because the second week back into netball, I was on the court for literally 2 minutes with my ankle guard on, gone up for an intercept, which I got, and have come down on my ankle again with my ankle guard on. And my left ankle was at right angles. We've ended up having a look at the footage, and it's in a position that shouldn't be at all. And I remember my husband being there, and I'm come off the court, and I'm going, I've fucking done my ankle again. Because no, you'd be right. I went, no, like I fully fucked it again. I've done it really, really good again. Anyway, go and have an ultrasound or X-rays or MRI. I can't remember what I had. I feel like I've had so many scans lately on my ankle. It's not funny. And I had torn another 2 ligaments. And because the way the inside of the ankle had closed in together so much, I have got bone bruising on the inside of my ankle. And welcome back, moon boot. I got to see the pretty friend again. And then that's where shit hit the fan. That's where my head literally just plummeted. Just the thought of being back in a moon boot and not being able to do anything. It just kind of felt that every time I start to get on a roll with my head and finding a good relationship with exercise, something would happen. And I always remember back to the first time I did my ankle was where one of the girls goes, there's a reason why this happened. Yes, there is a reason why it happened. It was so I could address my head. But it was at the point where, how much more can I take? I don't know how much more I can take. The dog's barking again. So that was 2024. And August 2024 was the third time I had done my ankle in 18 months. And September I was back in hospital as an inpatient. It's been a wild, wild ride. And Beck said to me today, like, is this how our life's going to be now? I said, yeah, it's going to be going up and down, up and down. It's going to be a roller coaster. And it's just a matter of being able to get the gap between our highs and our lows closer. So we're learning how to live with it instead of us being controlled by it. So I've had TMS twice now, and both times I've had positive results. I see my physio weekly, my ankle. I continue to see my psychiatrist. And that was a very short, sharp overview of where I have gotten today and how I have learned that it's okay to be vulnerable. And that's hard, particularly when I've come from a job where you're not allowed to show any emotion. You're not allowed to show fear. You're not allowed to show sadness. And now I'm having to relearn that, yes, it is okay. And it is okay to have issues that we face and be able to work on them and then fall off and then try again and fall off and then try again. And I think that's the important thing that I've learned over these last 4 years, that, yeah, it hurts. It hurts when you fall. But what other option do we have but to get back up again and to keep trying and to fall and to get up again and to get up again? Because at the end of the day, each time I get back up, I'm making myself stronger. And the rational part of my brain starts talking that little bit louder. So So I feel like I've been talking about a lot of heavy things, and the first few episodes of this podcast I think will be quite heavy because I think I need to be able to set the history and how we've evolved to where we are now. So I thank you for your patience. I thank you for putting up with my voice and listening to me pour my heart out. And as much as I would love for this podcast to just go boom, it's actually quite cathartic for me to be able to voice out where I'm up to. But peace out. I'll have a think about what we're going to talk about next week and enjoy the summer.